I've been behind the wheel of a big rig for nigh on 20 years now, crisscrossing these Appalachian back roads like threads in an old quilt. Name's Harlan, though most folks just call me by my CB handle, Timber Ghost, on account of how I haul logs through the dead of night when everyone else is tucked in safe. The pay's better after dark, fewer cars, less hassle from the DOT boys checking weights and logs. But it's lonely work, just you and the hum of the diesel, the occasional crackle of the radio, and the endless black ribbon of asphalt unspooling under your tires. I've seen my share of oddities out here. Deer with eyes like polished marble staring back at your high beams, fallen trees blocking paths like they were felled on purpose, even the odd hitchhiker who vanishes when you slow down. But nothing ever stuck with me like that one night in late autumn, back in 18, when the fog came down and brought something with it. It started like any other run. I'd picked up a load of fresh-cut pine from a mill up near Elkins, West Virginia, bound for a processing plant down in Pennsylvania. The trailer was heavy, groaning with the weight of those logs stacked high and strapped tight. The air had that crisp bite to it, the kind that seeps into your bones if you step out without a jacket. Leaves were turning, carpeting the ground in reds and golds, but under the tires they crunched like brittle bones, a sound that always puts me on edge for no good reason. I remember checking the weather on my phone before heading out. Clear skies, they said, maybe a light mist in the valleys. Lies, all of it. These mountains don't care about forecasts. They make their own rules. I veered off the main highway onto one of those narrow forest surface roads, the kind that's more gravel than pavement, winding through the Monongahela National Forest. It's a shortcut I've taken 100 times, saves about an hour if you're careful with the curves. My GPS was acting up that evening, kept recalculating, the screen flickering like it couldn't decide where I was. I figured it was the trees blocking the signal, thick as they are, oaks and maples clawing at the sky. No big deal. I knew these trails like the veins on the back of my hands, every dip, every blind turn. The cab was my world, the worn leather seat creaking under me, the dash lights glowing soft green, a thermos of black coffee steaming in the cup holder. I had the radio on low, tuned to some AM station out of Pittsburgh playing old country tunes, Hank Williams crooning about lost highways. Fitting, I thought. As the sun dipped below the ridges, the temperature dropped fast. I cracked the window a hair to let in the fresh air, smelling that damp earth scent mixed with pine sap and something metallic, like rain coming. But the sky was clear, stars starting to prick through the canopy. I lit a cigarette, the smoke curling lazy in the cab, and settled in for the long haul. About an hour in, around 10 o'clock, the fog started. It didn't roll in gentle. It poured down from the hills like milk from a jug, thick and white, swallowing the road ahead. My headlights punched into it, but they just bounced back, turning the world into a hazy glow. Trees loomed like ghosts on either side, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I downshifted, the engine growling low as I slowed to a crawl. Visibility was maybe 20 feet tops. The crunch of gravel under the tires sounded muffled, like the whole forest was holding its breath. That's when I first saw it, just a shape in the mist, off to the right, maybe 10 yards from the shoulder. At first glance, I took it for a deer, common enough out here, standing frozen in the lights before darting away. But this one didn't move. It was tall, taller than any buck I'd seen, and gaunt like it had been starved down to bone and sinew. Draped in something ragged, maybe old cloth or hides, blending so well with the bark of the trees behind it that if it hadn't shifted slightly, I might have missed it altogether. I eased the rig forward, expecting it to bolt, but it just stood there, stock still, watching. Yeah, watching. That's the word that hit me even then. Not staring blankly like an animal, but observing, deliberate-like. A prickle ran up my neck, the kind you get when you feel eyes on you in an empty room. I honked the air horn, that deep blast echoing through the fog, figuring it'd scare off whatever it was, a bear maybe, or some hiker lost in the woods. But it didn't flinch. Instead, it turned its head, slow and smooth, like it was acknowledging me. The headlights caught its face, or what passed for one. No gleam in the eyes, just hollow sockets, dark pits that swallowed the light. The skin looked stretched tight over sharp bones, pale and mottled. My heart kicked up a notch, and I felt the cold seeping in through the cracked window, colder than it had any right to be. "What the hell?" I muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. I revved the engine, the rig lurching forward, and pushed on, leaving it behind in the mist. But it wasn't gone.
A mile or so down the trail, hard to tell in that soup, the shape appeared again, this time on the left side, parallel in my path through the underbrush. Not running, not crashing through the branches like a panicked critter, but moving steady, keeping pace. I caught glimpses, long limbs swinging loose, that ragged cover and flapping like torn sails. I told myself it was my imagination, the fog playing tricks, shadows from the trees. Truckers get road hypnosis, staring too long into the white line. Maybe that's all it was. But deep down, I knew better. These woods have stories, old ones, whispered in diners over greasy eggs and coffee. Tales of folks gone missing, swallowed by the hills, turning feral or worse. My pa used to tell them when I was a kid, sitting by the fire in our cabin up near Dolly Sods. The mountains remember, he'd say, his voice low. They keep what they take. I shook off the memory, focused on the road. The GPS was dead now, screen blank, so I navigated by feel, the rig bouncing over ruts that jarred my teeth. The radio static picked up, hissing and popping like fat in a skillet. I twisted the dial, searching for a signal, but all I got was white noise, broken by faint whispers. At first I thought it was bleed over from another station, garbled words. But then it cleared just a bit, and I heard it, my name. Not Harlan, but Harry, the nickname my ma used when I was little, before she passed from the cancer that ate her slow. "Harry, come back," it murmured, soft as a sigh. My blood turned to ice. No one called me that anymore, not since I was 10. I slapped the radio off, the silence rushing in, thick and oppressive. Another mile, and there it was again, the watcher, closer this time, maybe 5 yards off the trail. I could make out more details now, the way its head tilted, like it was listening to something I couldn't hear. Its movements were wrong, too fluid for a person stumbling through brush, too silent, no snaps of twigs, no rustle of leaves, just that steady, unrelenting presence. I floored the accelerator, the engine growling as I pushed the rig harder than I should on that narrow path. The trailer swayed, logs shifting with a groan, but I didn't care. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the chill, my hands slick on the wheel. "Get gone," I growled, as if it could hear me, but it kept up, weaving through the trees like it knew every root and rock. The fog thickened, if that was possible, pressing against the windows like a living thing. I rolled up the crack I'd left open, locking the doors out of habit, though what good that'd do against something out there I didn't know. Memories flooded unbidden, nights as a boy, lying in bed listening to the wind howl through the pines, convinced something was scratching at the door. Pa would check, shotgun in hand, come back saying it was just a coon or the branches, but his eyes always looked uneasy, like he wasn't sure. And now here I was, a grown man, feeling that same childish dread knot in my gut. The whispers came back, even with the radio off, faint from the vents maybe, or just in my head. "Harry, stay," over and over, pulling at me like hooks in my skin. I don't know how long it went on, hours felt like, though the clock said only 30 minutes. The watcher appeared every few miles, always watching, never approaching, but never falling behind. Once it stepped on the edge of the trail, right in the path of my lights, and I swerved hard to avoid it. The rig skidded on loose gravel. The figure didn't move. It just turned those hollow sockets toward me as I passed, close enough I could have reached out and touched it. Its skin wasn't skin, more like weathered hide, cracked and gray, with what looked like vines or roots twisted into the rags it wore. And the smell, God, the smell that wafted in even with the windows up, rotten, wet soil, like an open grave. Panic set in for real then. I grabbed the CB mic, keying it up. "Breaker, breaker, this is Timber Ghost on the Monongahela back trail. Anyone copy? Got a situation here." Static answered, then more whispers. "Harry, alone. No one out there, or if they were, they weren't hearing me." The mountains block signals like that sometimes, but this felt deliberate, like the fog was jamming everything. I thought about stopping, waiting it out till morning, but the idea of sitting still with that thing out there, no. I kept driving, the rig protesting with every turn, my eyes darting to the mirrors, expecting to see it climbing the trailer. Around 3 in the morning, the trail opened up a bit, widened into a pull-off where loggers sometimes park. I considered it, but pushed on. That's when the watcher got bold. It appeared ahead, standing in the middle of the road, arms hanging limp. I slammed on the brakes, air hissing, the rig shuddering to a stop maybe 15 feet away. Up close, in the full glare of the highs, it was worse. No face really, just those sockets and a slit for a mouth, no teeth visible. It raised one hand, slow, palm out like it was beckoning. The whisper swelled. "Harry, home." My ma's voice now, weak like her last days, calling me from the bed where she wasted away. Tears stung my eyes. I hadn't cried since her funeral. I don't remember deciding, I just acted, foot to the floor, the engine bellowing as I charged forward. The watcher didn't move, and for a split second I braced for impact, the thud of body on grill, but there was nothing, just mist parting, and it was gone, vanished like smoke. I barreled through, heart hammering, checking the mirrors, nothing. The fog started lifting then, thinning out as the first gray light of dawn crept over the ridges. By the time I hit the main highway, the sun was up, burning off the last wisps. I pulled into the first diner I saw, hands shaking as I ordered coffee, black and hot. Folks there laughed when I tried to tell them, chalking it up to a long night, maybe too much caffeine or not enough sleep. Truckertales, they said, slapping my back, but I know what I saw. It wasn't a deer, wasn't a hiker. Maybe one of those feral folks the old-timers talk about, people who wandered off the grid and turned wild, forgetting how to be human, or something older, something the mountains spit up when the fog comes down. I started taking longer routes after that, skirting the Monongahela when I could. Sold the old rig, bought a new one with better lights, a dash cam too, though it never caught nothing. And I keep a loaded shotgun under the seat now, shells chambered for buckshot. Not that it'd do much good against something that doesn't bleed, but the dread lingers, quiet and constant. Every foggy night I scan the shoulders, waiting for that shape to appear. And sometimes in the static of the radio or the wind through the vents, I hear it still, Harry, calling me back to those trails. The woods remember, like Pa said, and I wonder if one day they'll call loud enough that I answer.
I've been running freight through these Appalachian Mountains for going on 25 years now, ever since I got my CDL fresh out of high school back in '99. Folks call me Ray, though on the CB I'm Smokey Bear, because I spend more time in the Great Smoky Mountains than most rangers do. I haul whatever needs moving, heavy equipment, lumber, coal, you name it, from the little mills and mines tucked in the hollers to wherever the buyers are waiting. The money's decent if you don't mind the hours, and I never did. Nights are best. The roads are empty, the air cooler, and there's something peaceful about the hum of the diesel cutting through the dark. But peace out here is fragile, like thin ice on a creek in early spring. One wrong step and you're in over your head. This particular run was in late September a few years back, the kind of evening where the sun hangs low and lazy, painting everything in that golden light before it slips away. I'd picked up a load of rusted-out machinery parts, gears and shafts for some old sawmill from a warehouse down in Knoxville, and was headed to a remote logging site up near the North Carolina line, deep in the Smokies where the maps start lying to you. The main highways would have added hours, so I took one of those old gravel trails, the forgotten ones that snake through the national forest. They're rough, washed out in places from the rains we'd had all week, but my Peterbilt could handle it. The rig bounced and groaned over the ruts, trailer swaying like a drunk behind me, but I kept steady, sipping coffee from my thermos and listening to the low croon of an old bluegrass station fading in and out. The sun was dipping behind the ridges when I first spotted the overpass. It rose up out of the kudzu like some ancient ruin. Concrete pillars choked with vines thick as my arm, the top arched and cracked where trees had taken root decades ago. Probably built back in the 40s for the logging trains that used to haul timber out of these mountains before the Park Service shut it all down. Now it was just a relic, looming over the trail like it was waiting for something that never came back. The wind picked up as I approached, whistling through the rebar and making the whole thing creak low and mournful. I eased under it slow, the shadow swallowing my rig whole, tires rumbling on the broken pavement underneath. That's when I heard the first sound, not thunder, though the sky was clear, but a deep rumble that seemed to come from the bones of the structure itself, like the ground was groaning under some weight it couldn't quite shake. I glanced up through the windshield, then checked the mirrors. Nothing but vines swaying and the trail disappearing behind me into the green. The air felt different though, heavier, charged like right before a storm, with that sharp ozone tang that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. I shook it off. Old bridges make noses, especially ones left to rot, and kept rolling. But the rumble lingered in my chest, a vibration I felt more than heard. A half-mile past the overpass, I pulled over into a wide spot where the trail flattened out, figuring it was time for a smoke break. My legs were stiff from the drive, and the coffee had run straight through me. I killed the engine, the sudden silence rushing in like water into a sinking boat. Crickets were starting up in the underbrush, and somewhere far off an owl called once, lonely. I stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, and lit a cigarette, leaning against the warm hood. The forest pressed close on both sides, dark and thick, the last light filtering through the leaves and slanted bars. That's when the echoes started. At first they were faint, like voices carried on the wind from miles away, muffled words, overlapping, too soft to make out. I figured it was the breeze moving through the overpass behind me, playing tricks with the hollow spaces up there. These mountains do that. Sound bounces funny off the ridges, makes you think you're hearing things. But as I stood there drawing on my smoke, the voices sharpened, creeping closer. Not wind, actual conversations, fragments drifting down like falling leaves. "Don't go down there," one said, a man's voice, urgent and rough, like a miner's after years underground. Then another overlapping. "The timbers are cracking. Get out while you can." I froze, cigarette halfway to my lips. My eyes flicked back toward the overpass, but it was hidden now by a bend in the trail. The voices kept coming, clear with every passing second. A woman this time, soft and pleading. "My babies. Where are my babies?" Chills ran down my spine.
the kind that start at the base of your neck and settle cold in your gut. Names floated through: Elias, Ruth, Little Tommy. Dates too, like March 47 and the flood of 52. Pieces of lives long gone, trapped in the air. I told myself it was echoes from somewhere else, maybe hikers up on a ridge or a radio signal bouncing weird, but they felt too real, too personal. And then one hit me square, a boy's voice, cracking like he was just hitting puberty, saying, "Ray, why didn't you pull me out?" My cigarette dropped from my fingers, burning forgotten on the ground. That was my brother's voice, or close enough to twist the knife. Tommy died when we were kids, back in '89, in a wreck I was driving. I'd been 16, joyriding on a back road slick with rain, and I took a curve too fast. He was 14, riding shotgun, laughing 1 minute and gone the next. I'd buried that memory deep, covered it with years of miles and silence, but here it was, rising up like floodwater. The voices swelled then, a chorus of argument and grief. Miners shouting about a cave-in, timber snapping, dust choking the air. A woman sobbing for children swept away in high water. Trappers warning of something in the woods that didn't belong. And threaded through it all, Tommy's voice, faint but insistent. "You left me, Ray, in the dark." My heart pounded so hard I thought it burst. I backed toward the cab, eyes scanning the tree line, half expecting shapes to step out. The air grew thicker, pressing in, and the overpass groaned again in the distance, deeper this time, like it was answering them. I climbed into the rig fast, slamming the door and firing the engine. The diesel roared to life, a comfort in its familiar rumble. I threw it in gear and gunned it, gravel spitting from the tires as I haul-assed down the trail. But the echoes didn't fade. They followed, seeping through the vents, clear as if the speakers were talking right in my ear. More fragments, pleas for help, accusations, regrets. Should have stayed home that day. The water rose so fast. And always, "Tommy, it hurt, Ray. Why did you speed?" Tears blurred my vision. I hadn't cried about him in years, not since the funeral, but I wiped them away angry, focusing on the ruts and roots threatening to high-center the trailer. Night fell hard as I drove, the headlights carving tunnels through the black. I kept checking the mirrors, and that's when I saw them, flickers in the gloom behind me, shapes moving under the overpass as I glanced back at a straight stretch, pale forms, indistinct, reaching out like they were trying to grab hold of the trailer, hands pressing against nothing, mouths open in silent cries. The structure loomed in the rear view whenever the trail curved just right, vines swaying like nooses in the wind. The groans came louder, rhythmic now, matching the voices. I pushed the rig harder, engine straining on the upslope, sweat soaking my shirt despite the cool air blasting from the vents. Hours blurred together, felt like days trapped in that loop of sound and shadow. The echoes pulled at every buried thing. The fight with my pa before he drank himself gone. The girl I left pregnant back in high school. All the miles I'd run from who I was. They knew me, these voices. Knew things I'd never told a soul. Tommy's the worst, describing the wreck in detail. The screech of tires, the flip, the dark closing in as he bled out while I crawled free with barely a scratch. "You walked away," he whispered. I didn't. I don't know how I made the delivery site by morning. The sun was just cresting the ridges when the trail spilled out onto a logging road proper, the overpass far behind. The echoes faded gradual, like a radio losing signal, until all that was left was the wind and my ragged breathing. I dropped the load mechanical, hands shaking, and didn't stick around for chit-chat with the crew. Headed straight for the highway, vowing never to take that trail again. But avoidance don't work forever in these mountains. The voices come back in quiet moments, when I'm pulled over for a nap or driving through rain that sounds like pleading. Sometimes late at night, parked in a lot with the engine off, I hear the faint groan of old concrete, feel that charged air, and Tommy's voice, soft as ever. "Why didn't you pull me out?" I avoid the Smokies when I can now, stick to interstates, but the past clings like kudzu. Some places hold on to what happened there, trap it in the stones and vines, and when you cross them alone, they reach back. Makes you wonder if one day the echoes will call loud enough that I turn around, drive back under that overpass, and finally answer.
I've been hauling coal out of these West Virginia strip mines for damn near 30 years, ever since I was old enough to climb into a cab and keep the pedal down. Folks around here know me as Cole, just Cole, because my last name's too long and nobody bothers with it. On the CB, I'm Black Diamond, on account of the loads I run, that shiny anthracite that burns hot and clean, scraped from the guts of these ancient mountains. The work's hard, the hours worse, but it keeps food on the table and the bills paid. Most runs are routine. Load up at dusk, drive through the night when the roads are empty and the air's cooler, drop off at dawn somewhere down in Virginia or Ohio. You learn to love the solitude, the way the rig becomes your whole world, engine rumbling like a heartbeat, headlights carving out the dark ahead. But solitude out here on the ridges can turn on you quick, especially when the mountains decide to remind you they're older than any of us and keep their own counsel. This one night stands out clear as yesterday, even though it was back in the summer of 21, one of those perfect July evenings where the sky is so full of stars, it feels like you could reach up and grab a handful. I just loaded at a little operation up near Webster Springs, the trailer groaning heavy with fresh dug coal, dust still settling on the tarp. The foreman waved me off with the usual warnings about watching the grades. These high ridge trails in the Allegheny Mountains aren't forgiving. One slip on loose gravel and you're over the edge, tumbling hundreds of feet into the hollers below. I'd run this particular Forest Service road plenty of times. It cuts across a spine of the mountain, narrow and steep, but it shaves hours off the trip. The air was warm when I started out, windows cracked, radio playing low, some old Hank Snow tune about lonesome whistles. But as I climbed higher, the temperature dropped unnatural fast, a musty chill seeping in like the breath from a deep mine shaft. Didn't make sense for midsummer, but these mountains do what they want. The trail wound tight, switchbacks hugging the ridge, drop-offs on one side black as ink, thick forest pressing in on the other. My headlights swept across rock faces and tangled underbrush, picking out the occasional reflective eyes of a deer or coon before they bolted. I was maybe halfway up the steepest stretch, engine downshifted low and growling, when the beams caught something odd off to the right, a patch of disturbed earth, fresh turned and mounded up beside the trail. No roadwork signs, no equipment tracks, just a long heap of dirt about 6 feet by 3, loose and clumped with roots, like someone had dug in a hurry and piled it back sloppy. No marker, no cross, nothing to say what it was. In these parts, folks still bury their own sometimes. Old-timers who don't trust funeral homes, or accidents up in the woods nobody reports. I slowed the rig, curious despite myself. Truckers see all kinds of things on back roads, and stopping for a look usually don't hurt. I eased to the shoulder where the trail widened a hair, set the brakes, and left the engine idling, headlights aimed straight at the mound. The night was clear overhead, stars sharp, but down here the air felt thick, heavy with that damp earth smell you get after rain, though we hadn't had any in days. Crickets were chirping steady, a breeze rustling the leaves. I grabbed my flashlight from the door pocket, always keep one handy, and stepped down, boots crunching on gravel. Up close, the dirt looked even fresher, dark and moist, clumps scattered like the hole had been filled fast. No tire marks leading to it, no footprints I could make out in the glare, just that mound, silent and waiting. Curiosity's a dangerous thing out here alone. I don't know why I did it, maybe the stillness, maybe some pull I couldn't name, but I walked over and nudged the edge with my boot, testing how loose it was. The soil gave easy, shifting under the pressure, and then I felt it, something pushing back from underneath. Not a collapse or settling, but deliberate pressure, like a hand braced against the weight above. My breath caught sharp. I froze, boot still planted, waiting for it to happen again. Nothing at first, just the low rumble of my idling diesel behind me. Then it came, faint scratching, slow and rhythmic from down in the dirt, nails on wood maybe, or on packed earth. Scratch, pause, scratch, like something testing the confines of a tight space. The cricket stopped all at once, no gradual fade, just gone, the night dropping into dead silence, except for that scratching in my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I backed up a step, flashlight beam trembling across the mound. The air grew colder, that musty chill wrapping around me like wet cloth, and then the whisper rose, thin and raspy, bubbling up through the soil. Help me up, a man's voice, weak but clear, like lungs half full of dirt. I stumbled back toward the rig, skin crawling, every instinct screaming to get gone. I'd heard the old tales growing up, miners buried alive in collapses, tapping on timbers till the air ran out, bodies never recovered in the deep workings. Paul worked the mines before he got black lung and wasted away. He'd tell stories by the wood stove about voices heard in sealed shafts, rescuers swearing they heard scratching weeks after hope was gone. But those were just stories, drunk talk in the VFW hall. This was real. I reached the cab, yanked the door open, and hauled myself in, slamming it hard. Hands shaking, I threw the rig in gear and eased forward, eyes locked on the mirrors. The mountain looked undisturbed again, dirt settled neat as before, but the whispering didn't stop. It followed, faint at first, threading through the engine noise. Help me, over and over, raspy and pleading. I turned the radio up loud, some old gospel station out of Charleston, but the voice cut through like it was inside the cab with me. As I climbed higher, the trail narrowed, the drop-off yawning black on my left. I felt eyes on me then, not from the grave, but from the woods on the right, watching, waiting. Branches scraped the trailer like fingers as I pushed faster than I should, tires flirting with the edge. The whisper changed as the miles crept by, no longer just begging. It started naming things. Cole, you hear me? My name, clear as day. Nobody on this run knew my route. I'd filed it vague with dispatch like always. Then fragments. The timbers gave way. Dark. A miner's voice describing the collapse. Roof falling, men screaming, dust choking everything. Dates too, 19 and 43, like memories spilling out. My mind reeled back
traps in particular, up in these same mountains. A small wildcat mine where a dozen men were lost, and the company just sealed it over. Too expensive to dig out. Bodies left where they fell. Was this one of them, or something worse? Someone buried reason. Hasty. Secrets the mountains keep quiet. The higher I climbed, the colder it got. Breath fogging in the cab, even with the heater on. The whispering grew intimate, pulling at things I'd buried deep. Your paw, coughed blood, same dark. Memories of sitting by his bed, listening to him rasp for air, promising I'd never go underground. You left him, like us, guilt twisted sharp. How I'd taken the road job to escape the mines. Left Ma to care for him alone till he passed. Tears stung my eyes. I hadn't thought about that in years. The voice knew, feeding on it, growing stronger. Scratching sounds came through the fence now, faint but there, like nails on metal from inside the trailer. I crested the ridge near dawn, the trail finally leveling before it dropped toward the highway. The whispering faded gradual, like distance muffling it, until all that was left was the engine and my ragged breathing. The sun rose red over the hollers, burning off the chill, but the dread stayed rooted deep. I made the delivery mechanical, barely speaking to the yard man, then found a diner and sat with coffee till my hands stopped shaking. Told the waitress a shortened version. She just nodded, said her granddaddy told tales of unmarked graves up on those ridges, folks buried quick for reasons best left alone, moonshine feuds, mine accidents covered up, worse things. I avoid that trail now, take the long way even if it costs hours and fuel, but the mountains are full of ridges, full of forgotten paths. Every time I climb high, especially on clear summer nights when the air turns musty gold, I scan the shoulders for fresh dirt. Sometimes I think I see it, a low mound, innocent in the headlights, and late at night, parked in some empty lot with the engine off, the silence brings it back, faint scratching, a raspy plea carried on the wind. Help me up. Makes me munch how many are down there, waiting for a passerby to hear how thin the dirt is between us and them, and whether one day, on some lonely ridge, I'll stop again, whether the voice will call loud enough that I grab a shovel and finally answer.
I've spent most of my adult life behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler, running freight through the hollers and ridges of eastern Kentucky. Folks call me Boone, short for my last name, though it fits the territory I cover better than anything. On the CB, I'm Redbird, because I favor the back roads where the pavement gives way to gravel and the trees close in tight. Been at it since I was 21, right after my daddy passed and left me the old Kenworth he babied like a child. These dense forests in the Daniel Boone National Forest are my backyard. I've hauled timber, coal, furniture parts, whatever pays, mostly at night when the highways are clear and the logging camps need their supplies before first light. You learn to trust your gut out here. The mountains don't give warnings twice, whether it's a washout around a blind curve or black ice hiding under fresh snow. But there's instincts, and then there's that deeper pull, the kind that tells you something's watching when there's no reason for anything to be out there at all. It was one of those bitter January nights a few years back, the kind where the cold bites through the cab even with the heater cranked high. I'd picked up a load of chainsaws and replacement parts for a big outfit working a track deep in the forest, the kind of place you only reach by narrow service trails that wind like veins through the hills. Snow had started as I left Stanton, light flurries at first, dancing in the headlights like ash from a distant fire, turning the world monochromatic, all grays and whites under the beams. The radio was playing low, some old Merle Haggard song about working men in hard roads, fading in and out as the signal bounced off the ridges. I had the wipers on intermittent, the tires crunching over packed snow, the trailer loaded heavy but balanced. Felt like any other winter run, quiet, lonely, the way I like it. The trail narrowed quick after I left the county road, trees crowding close, branches heavy with snow brushing the sides of the rig like whispers. Visibility was decent enough. The flurries weren't thick yet, just enough to soften the edges of everything. I was maybe 10 miles in, the engine settled into that steady growl when it started. A flicker in the passenger side mirror, something dark darting across the white behind the trailer, quick like a deer crossing, but lower, closer to the ground. I adjusted the mirror automatic, tilting it down for a better look. Nothing there, just snow swirling in my taillights, trees standing silent. Told myself it was a trick of the light, snowflakes catching the red glow wrong. Happens sometimes. Your eyes play games after hours staring into the dark. But it came again a minute later, this time in the driver's side mirror, a shadow slipping between the trunks, keeping pace with the rig. Not falling behind, not pulling ahead, just matching my speed perfect. I slowed a touch, testing, and it slowed too, weaving through the underbrush silent as smoke. Not a wolf. Wolves don't move upright like that, don't keep to the shadows with such purpose. This was taller, limbs too long, body hunched but deliberate. My skin prickled under the layers, flannel, thermal, jacket, and I reached for the thermos, needing the hot coffee to steady my hands. The snow picked up then, flakes thicker, starting to stick on the windshield. I flipped the wipers to steady, focused on the trail ahead, telling myself it was nothing, just a big cat or a bear roused early, curious about the noise.
The radio crackled when I tried switching stations, static mostly, with faint bursts of talk bleeding through, truckers farther out on the interstate jawing about weather and loads. I keyed the mic anyway, needing a voice that wasn't my own echoing in the cab. "Breaker, breaker, this is Redbird running the Boone back trail. Anybody copying out there tonight?" Static answered, thick and hissing, laced with something else. Distant howls riding the wave, low and drawn out. Not coyotes. Coyotes yipped sharp and frantic. These were deeper, almost human, rising and falling like a mournful call across the valleys. I let go of the mic quick, unease settling heavier. The shadow was bolder now, showing itself clearer in the mirrors. A form keeping perfect pace, low to the ground but upright enough to chill the blood. Pale skin flashed in glimpses when the taillights caught it, stretched tight over sharp bones, limbs elongated like it had been pulled wrong. I picked up speed, the rig growling as I downshifted around a curve, tires slipping a hair on the fresh snow before catching. The shadow didn't falter. It wove through the trees effortless, tireless, closing the gap gradual. My breath came shorter, fogging the inside of the windshield even with the defroster blasting. Memories crept in unbidden. Old stories from the logging camps. Men talking low over coffee about things seen in these woods after dark. Feral people, they called them sometimes. Folks who'd wandered off years ago and never come back right. Living wild in caves and hollows, watching the roads. Or worse, remnants of older things. Families that never mixed with outsiders, keeping to bloodlines too close. My granddaddy swore he'd seen one once, back in the 50s, pacing his truck just like this before vanishing into the brush. I'd laughed it off as a boy, moonshine tales. But now, with that shape matching me mile for mile, the laughter felt far away. The howls came again through the static, closer this time, threaded with whines that almost sounded like words. Names maybe, or please. I turned the radio off altogether, the sudden silence louder than the noise. Snow was falling heavy now, accumulating on the shoulders, the trail turning slick. The shadow grew bolder, stepping into the open behind the trailer for longer stretches. In the rear view I caught more details, limbs too jointed wrong, skin pallid and hairless, eyes catching the light hollow and unblinking. It wasn't running, it was loping, efficient, like it had been born to move through these woods unseen. Panic started low in my gut, building slow. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, scanning for a wide spot to pull over and waited out till dawn. But the trail stayed narrow, drop-offs on one side, rock face on the other. Then it leapt. I felt the rig shudder before I saw it. A heavy thud on the trailer hitch, metal groaning under sudden weight. The whole truck lurched, trailer swaying as something clung on. I swerved instinctive, tires skidding, fighting to keep her straight on the icy path. In the mirror I saw it clear, crouched on the fifth wheel, limbs splayed for balance, face turned toward the cab. Hollow cheeks, expression blank as a mask, eyes dark pits reflecting my brake lights red. It crawled forward slow, deliberate, pale hands gripping the frame, body pressed low against the wind and snow. Breath fogged the back window of the sleeper as it reached it, slow, rhythmic puffs, like it was smelling the air inside. My heart hammered wild. I floored the accelerator, engine roaring as I pushed the rig harder than safe on that twisting trail. Snow sprayed from the tires, the trailer fishtailing on curves, chains clinking where I'd wrapped them loose just in case. The thing clung tight, unmoving against the force, face inches from the glass now. Up close it was worse, skin mottled and scarred, mouth a thin line, no emotion in those eyes, just hunger or curiosity, I couldn't tell. It tilted its head, studying me like I was the strange one, fingers scraping faint on the windshield. The cab filled with a smell then, seeping through the seals, damp earth and decay like something pulled from a wet cave. I swerved hard around a sharp bend, tires screaming for traction, hoping to throw it off. It held for a moment, then tumbled as the trailer whipped, rolling into the snowbank with a muffled thud, limbs flailing. I caught one last glimpse in the mirror, it rising slow, unhurt, watching as I pulled away. The snow swallowed it quick, but the marks stayed. Deep scratches scored into the metal of the hitch and frame, like claws had racked for purchase. I don't talk about it much now. Folks at the truck stops figure it was fatigue, too many hours, eyes playing games in the snow. Maybe they're right, Lord knows we all see things out here alone. But I drive with the high beams on full after dark now, even when it blinds oncoming traffic, and I drape towels over the mirrors when I stop for breaks. Some nights parked in lots far from the forest, I still check the rear view compulsive, half expecting that hollow face to appear, breath-fogging glass that isn't there. And when the snow starts falling heavy, or the wind carries distant howls through the static, I feel it, the weary being hunted. These woods keep their secrets close, and whatever waits in the shadows doesn't tire, doesn't forget. It makes me wonder how many drivers it's paced before me, how many it finally caught when the trail ran out.
I've been driving trucks through these Appalachian Mountains for more than 20 years, long enough that the rumble of a diesel engine feels like an extension of my own heartbeat. Folks know me as Eli around the truck stops in Asheville, though my CB handle is Blue Ridge Rambler. I run mostly medical supplies these days, oxygen tanks, IV bags, crates of pharmaceuticals from the distribution centers down in the flatlands, up to the little clinics and nursing homes tucked in the hollers where ambulances don't like to go after dark. The pay's steady, the hours long, and the roads, well, the roads are what they are. Narrow, winding, half-forgotten trails that the GPS barely acknowledges, flanked by ancient oaks and rhododendron thickets so dense you can't see 10 feet into them. I prefer the night runs, fewer tourists, cooler air, and a quiet that lets a man think.
or sometimes lets him remember things he'd rather not. That particular evening in early November a couple years ago started ordinary enough. I'd loaded up at the warehouse outside Brevard just as the sun was dipping behind the ridges, the sky bleeding orange and purple over the Pisgah National Forest. The trailer was packed tight with cases bound for a remote hospice up near the Tennessee line, fragile stuff that needed gentle handling over the ruts. Dusk comes quick in these mountains once fall sets in. By the time I turned off the paved forest road onto the old gravel service trail, the light was already fading fast, shadows stretching long and thin across the path. The air smelled of wet leaves and impending rain, the kind that seeps into your bones. I had the windows cracked a hair, letting in the cool, and the CB radio on scan, searching for any chatter from other drivers who might be out this way. Mostly static as usual. Dead zones riddle these trails like wormholes in old wood. The path was rougher than I remembered, washed out in places from the storms we'd had the week before. My Peterbilt bounced slow over the ruts, suspension creaking, headlights sweeping across gnarled trunks and hidden hollows that dropped away sharp into blackness. Ancient oaks arched overhead, their branches knitting a tunnel that swallowed the last of the daylight. I sipped coffee from my thermos, black and strong, trying to shake the tiredness that always settles in around this hour. The radio crackled once or twice, normal interference from the ridges, I figured, but then it woke up for real. A burst of static, sharp and sudden, followed by a voice cutting through, faint and distorted like it was coming from the bottom of a well. "Turn back, it's waiting." I sat up straighter, hand reaching for the mic. No call sign, no handle, just those words hanging in the cab. I keyed up quick. "Say again, Breaker, this is Blue Ridge Rambler, who's out there?" Nothing but hiss in response. I tried a couple more times, scanning channels, but the airwaves stayed empty. Laughed it off after a minute. Old repeater towers up on the peaks sometimes pick up stray signals, echoes from years ago, or pranksters with too much time. These mountains are full of ghost signals, folks say, voices from miners long gone, or lost hikers calling for help that never came. I turned the volume down a notch and kept rolling, the trail twisting deeper into the forest. But the voice came back, clearer this time, the distortion peeling away like fog burning off. "Eli, the bend ahead, slow down." My name, clear as if the speaker was sitting in the passenger seat. My foot eased off the accelerator, instinctive, heart kicking up a beat. How the hell did it know my name? Dispatch maybe, bleeding through somehow? But I hadn't checked in since leaving the warehouse. The trail curved sharp ahead, just like it said, and as my light swept around the bend, there it was, a massive poplar downed across the path, branches splayed like broken fingers. I braked hard, tires locking on gravel, the rig sliding to a stop inches from the trunk. Coffee sloshed from the thermos onto my leg, scalding, but I barely felt it. Stared at that tree, fresh snapped at the base, blocking the path complete. If I'd been going full speed, well, I'd have plowed right into it, maybe jackknifed the trailer. I sat there idling, staring, while the voice returned, soft, almost conversational. "Good, careful now." Sweat prickled under my collar despite the chill seeping in. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped out to check the damage, boots sinking into mud. The tree was too big to winch alone, too heavy to drag with the rig. I'd have to chainsaw it or wait for morning light and call for help. But as I stood there shining the beam over the bark, the radio crackled again from the open cab door. "The clearing, 2 miles, wait there." I froze. 2 miles ahead was a wide spot I'd used before, a natural clearing where loggers once staged. How could it know my route that precise? The cargo even, the medicine they needed, but not tonight. Unease settled deep then, the kind that starts in your gut and spreads slow. I climbed back in, locked the doors out of habit, silly, but it made me feel better, and eased around the tree careful, tires flirting with the drop-off on the downside. The voice guided me the whole way, calm and knowing. "Watch the washout, left side." Sure enough, a gully had opened up, mud slick and deep. Roots ahead, straddle them. Every hazard it named appeared just when it said, like it was reading the trail from above, or from inside my head. I stopped trying to hail anyone. The channel stayed dead, just that one voice cutting through when it wanted. As the miles crept by, the warning shifted. No longer just the road, personal now, intimate. "Remember the crash, Eli? Route 19, rain slick. Her name was Clara." My hands tightened on the wheel till knuckles went white. Clara, my wife, gone 15 years now in a wreck I caused. I'd been driving too fast on a wet mountain road, arguing about money, about me always being gone on runs. Took a curve wrong, hydroplane, rolled the pickup. I walked away with scratches. She didn't wake up. Bury her up near Waynesville. Haven't visited the
grave in years because the guilt eats me alive every time. How could a signal know that? Your fault, the voice whispered, gentle but relentless. She screamed, then quiet. Memories flooded then, sharp and cruel. The screech of tires, the impact, her hand going limp in mine as I crawled from the wreckage calling her name. I'd buried it deep, covered it with miles in silence, told myself it was just an accident, bad luck on a bad road. But the voice peeled it all back layer by layer. You looked away, at the phone, dispatch calling. True, a run confirmation buzzing in my pocket. Glanced down for a second, 1 second. She forgave you, but you never forgave yourself. Tears blurred the windshield, or wiped him angry, focusing on the trail, but the voice kept on, soft as a confessor. The guilt, it's heavy cargo, Eli, heavier than oxygen tanks. The clearing appeared right where it said, a wide grassy spot ringed by oaks, moonlight filtering through now that the canopy opened up. I pulled in slow, set the brakes, and killed the lights but left the engine running, heater blowing warm against the cold creeping in. The radio went dead then, complete silence, no static, no voice, just the tick of cooling metal and my own ragged breathing. I sat there waiting for it to start again, mic in hand, but nothing came. The quiet felt worse somehow, thicker than the dark outside. That's when I heard the footsteps. Soft at first, muffled on the damp grass circling the rig. Deliberate paces, not animal, two-legged, measured, like someone taking their time. I shone the flashlight out the windows, beam cutting through the night, but saw nothing, no shapes, no eyes reflecting back, just empty clearing, mist starting to rise from the ground. But the footsteps kept on, slow circuit after circuit, closer each pass. Crunch of leaves under weight, pause, then continue. My skin crawled. I locked the doors again, though they were all ready. Checked the shotgun I keep racked behind the seat. The dirt around the rig showed imprints when I dared to look. Bare feet, long and narrow, breast deep as if carrying weight, circling perfect, but leading nowhere. No approach trail, no departure, just rings around my truck like a ritual. I didn't sleep, sat there till dawn with the engine idling, lights off to save the battery, every creak of the trailer or sigh of wind making me jump. The footsteps faded gradual near morning, like whatever it was lost interest where the light drove it back. When the sun finally crested the ridges, pale and weak, the clearing was empty, no prints visible anymore, washed away by dew or something else. The radio stayed silent the rest of the trip. I delivered the supplies late, made excuses about weather and fallen trees. The nurse at the hospice just nodded, said these trails take their toll. That transmission haunts me still. Was it a ghost signal, some old broadcast echoing through the mountains, or something worse, tuning into the guilt I carry like invisible cargo? Appalachia's airwaves carry more than weather reports and trucker talk. They carry echoes of the past, regrets that never quite fade. I drive without the radio now, scan off, preferring the unknown to hearing my own sins spoken back to me. But some nights, in dead zones deep in the forest, I swear I hear faint static in the silence, and a voice, patient as ever, waiting for me to key the mic and finally answer.
I've been running fuel tankers through the Nantahala forest for the better part of 18 years, ever since the oil company out of Murphy took a chance on a 30-year-old with more miles on his boots than his record. Folks down at the Chevron station just call me Wade. No last name needed, because there's only one of us hauling diesel and unleaded up those twisting gravel roads to the little marinas and ranger stations that civilization forgot. The money's good if you don't mind the deadlines, and I never did. Night runs pay extra, and on a clear evening, the Nantahala is beautiful in its own wild way. Ancient trees crowding close, the river rushing somewhere below in the dark, air thick with the smell of wet pine and earth. But beauty out here comes with teeth, and storms especially don't ask permission before they bite. It was late August a few years back, one of those humid evenings where the sky feels too heavy, like it's holding its breath. I'd loaded 2,500 gallons of diesel at the terminal, bound for a cluster of houseboats and a forestry camp up near the upper lake. Dispatch had been clear. Get it there before morning or the generators go dry and the crews can't work. I figured I'd beat the weather. Radar showed the cells building west, but I knew a shortcut trail that skirted the worst of the switchbacks. The big freightliner purred smooth as I left the pavement, gravel popping under the duals, headlights cutting tunnels through the rhododendron. Thunder grumbled distant at first, more threat than promise, and I cracked the window to let in the cool before the rain hit. Smelled it coming, ozone sharp, river mud rising. The storm broke about 10 miles in, sudden and mean as a slammed door. Rain came down in sheets, thick as curtains, pounding the roof like fists trying to get in. Wipers went full speed and still couldn't keep up. Visibility dropped to the hood ornament and not much farther. Lightning stitched the sky white, showing glimpses of the trail, mud already turning to soup, water sheeting across in rivulets. The rig started hydroplaning on the straights, trailer wanting to wander, so I eased off looking for a wide spot to pull over and wait it out.
These mountain storms pass quick if you give them time. Found a place where the trail flattened, a gravel turnout loggers use sometimes, and nosed in careful, setting the brakes with a hiss. Killed the headlights but left the markers on, engine idling low to keep the batteries charged and the cab warm. Rain hammered steady, wind rocking the tanker gentle, like a cradle with ill intent. I leaned back, sipping cold coffee from the thermos, watching water stream down the windshield in rivers. Thunder rolled closer, deep and rumbling through the bones of the earth. Felt almost peaceful at first, the way isolation can when you're used to it. Just me, the storm, and miles of empty forest. Then the lightning flashed bright, freezing everything in stark white, and I saw them. Eyes. Dozens of them scattered among the trees, reflecting the flash, steady and unblinking. Not low like deer or coon. These were higher, level with a man's, maybe higher, spaced out in the underbrush like they'd been waiting in the light to show themselves. The flash faded, darkness rushed back, but the afterimage burned, pale circles hanging in the black where no eyes should be. My skin prickled sharp. I told myself animals, maybe bears standing upright curious about the rig, or owls perched silent. But animals blink, animals move. These didn't. Another flash came seconds later, closer, thunder cracking right overhead like the sky split open. The eyes were still there, more now, ringed around the turnout in a loose circle. Too many for coincidence, too steady. I reached for the spotlight mounted on the mirror, flicked it on and swept the beam slow across the tree line. Nothing solid, just trunks slick with rain, leaves whipping in the wind, branches clawing at the sky. But every flash showed the eyes again, patient, watching. The storm worsened, wind howling through the canopy like a living thing, rain turning to a roar. In the lulls between thunder, I started hearing other sounds, shuffling in the brush, wet and deliberate, branches snapping under weight that moved careful. Not the random crack of wind. This was measured, circling. My mouth went dry. I locked both doors, though they were already. Checked the shotgun I keep in the sleeper rack, loaded with slugs, more for bears than anything else. Lightning flashed again, and I saw movement, a figure stepping out from the trees on the passenger side, tall and thin, clothes hanging soaked and heavy. It approached slow, head bowed against the downpour, until it reached the door. Pale hand rose, skin almost translucent, nails chipped and black with dirt, and tapped the window 3 times, soft but deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. I don't know why I cracked the window a hair, stupidity maybe, or some leftover decency from years of picking up stranded motorists. Rain blew and cold, soaking my sleeve. "You need help," I yelled over the storm, voice cracking worse than I wanted. "Get in out of the wed." No answer. The figure just lifted its head, and the parking lights got its face clear for the first time. Gaunt. Cheeks sunken, skin grayish and drawn tight over bone. Eyes hollow, deep sockets with no light in them, just darkness staring in. Clothes looked old, outdated, wool coat rotten at the cuffs, pants patched and mud-caked like from the 40s or earlier. Water streamed down its face, but it didn't blink, didn't flinch at the rain. It leaned closer, mouth working slow, forming words I couldn't hear over the roar. I read them anyway. Join us. Chills ran through me like ice water in the veins. I slammed the window up, hit the lock again though it was already down, heart hammering wild. In the mirrors I saw more of them now, figures emerging from the trees all around, soaked and silent, moving with that same deliberate shuffle. Dozens, maybe more, closing the circle tight. Lightning flashed constant now, showing them in frozen frames, men and women both, faces gaunt, clothes decades wrong, overalls, long dresses, suspenders, hair plastered flat by rain, all with those hollow eyes, all staring at the cab like it was something they'd waited years to see. Some reached out as they came, bombs open, besieging. Others just watched, heads tilted like listening to something I couldn't hear. Terror gripped me hard then, the kind that roots you for a second before fight or flight kicks in. They weren't threatening, no weapons, no rush, just that slow, inevitable approach, like the storm itself was herding them closer. The shuffling grew louder, feet dragging through mud, circling the rig complete now. One pressed against the driver's door, face inches from the glass, breath fogging it slow despite the cold. Another climbed onto the catwalk, hand sliding along the tanker slick with rain. I could hear them murmuring now in the lulls, low, overlapping, words lost under the wind, but the tone clear, invitation, longing. I don't remember deciding, just acted. Threw the rig in gear, revved the engine high, and let off the brakes. Tires spun in mud, slinging gravel and water, then caught. I plowed forward blind, headlights cutting through sheets of rain, figures scattering slow like they had all the time in the world. Felt thuds along the sides, bodies brushing metal, and slapping wet against the doors. One clung to the mirror a moment, face pressed close, mouth forming those same silent words before the wind ripped it away. I barreled down the trail reckless, trailer fishtailing, mud sucking at the wheels, praying I didn't slide off into the ravine. Kept going till the turnout was miles behind, till the storm started easing and the thunder rolled distant again. Dawn came gray and dripping, clouds stinging over the ridges. I pulled into the forestry camp late, fuel slushing low from the wild ride, hands still shaking on the wheel. The scratches were there clear in the morning light,
long, shallow gouges along both doors and the tanker sides, like fingernails dragged desperate for purchase. Told the camp boss I'd hit branches in the storm. He nodded sympathetic, said we'd had a bad one. Later, over coffee in the mess hall, an old ranger mentioned the floods of 40, big one that swept through the valley before the lake was dammed, took whole families camping along the river. Bodies never all found, he said quiet. Folks claim on bad storm nights you see them walking, looking for company, trying to bring folks home. I avoid rainy nights on those trails now, take the long way around when the forecast turns, even if it costs me the bonus. But some storms come up sudden, no warning, and when the rain starts pounding and the lightning flashes, I check the tree line quick. Sometimes I think I see eyes reflecting back, steady, unblinking, waiting. And on the worst nights, parked safe under bright lights far from the forest, I still hear it faint over the patter on the roof, shuffling just outside the rig, a soft tap on the glass, and that silent plea carried on the wind. Join us. Makes me wonder how long a man can outrun the lost before the storm catches him alone and the hollow-eyed finally open the door.
I've been hauling produce across these Appalachian Mountains for going on 28 years now, ever since my uncle handed me the keys to his old Mac and said the road would treat me better than the coal mines ever did. Folks at the markets in Johnson City just call me Mac. Fits the truck and the man, they say. On the CB, I'm garden hauler, because I run everything from apples in fall to Christmas trees in winter, whatever the orchards and farms need moved before it spoils. The work's seasonal, the hours brutal, but there's a rhythm to it I never could shake. Night drives are my favorite. Moonlight silvering the ridges, air crisp and clean, the trailer loaded heavy with the smell of fresh earth and fruit seeping through the vents. You feel alone out here in the best way, just you and the hum of the engine, the occasional deer crossing the beams. But alone can turn quick in these forests, especially when you stumble across something the road left behind. It was a clear October night a few years ago, the kind where the full moon hangs low and bright, turning the Cherokee National Forest into a black and silver world. I'd picked up a load of late-season pumpkins and squash from a farm down near Irwin, bound for a wholesale warehouse up in Virginia before the frost hit hard. The trailer was packed tight, straps creaking under the weight, the sweet, earthy smell filling the cab whenever I cracked the window. I took one of the old Forest Service trails to cut time, gravel and dirt mostly, winding through the Cherokee like a vein through muscle. Moonlight filtered through the canopy in patches, painting the path pale, pines standing tall and silent on both sides. Air was crisp with that sharp pine bite, cool enough I kept the heater on low. Radio was quiet, not many drivers out this late on a weekday. About halfway through the forest, the trail narrowed and curved gentle around a rock outcrop, and that's when I saw it. A semi parked crooked half off the shoulder, nose pointed into the trees like it had tried to pull over hasty and failed. No lights, no hazards blinking, doors hanging open on both sides. Looked like an older freightliner, paint faded, rust creeping along the fenders. Abandoned rigs aren't rare out here. Breakdowns, bad loads, drivers walking off for one reason or another. But something about this one felt off from the first glance. Too deliberate, maybe, or too still. I slowed automatic, protocol kicking in. Truckers look out for each other. If someone's stranded, you check. I pulled my rig past careful, set the brakes, and left the engine idling, headlights washing over the empty cab. Moonlight glinted off the chrome, sharp and cold. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped down, boots crunching on gravel. The air smelled stronger here, pine mixed with something stale, like old diesel and sweat. No steam from the exhaust, engine stone cold. I approached slow, calling out habit. Anybody home? Need a hand? Nothing answered but the wind sighing through the needles high up. The driver's door was ajar wide, sleeper curtain pulled back. I shone the light inside, seat empty, no sign of struggle, just paper scattered across the dash and floorboards like someone had rifled through in a hurry. Keys still dangled in the ignition, glinting. Logs from years back I saw when I leaned in. Faded entries, dates going back a decade or more. Routes I'd run myself. The name on the manifest caught my eye. J. Harlan. Same as my own middle name, though Harlan ain't uncommon around here. Curiosity pulled me closer. I don't know why I climbed the step and sat in the seat. Maybe checking for a note, or just that pull you feel sometimes around things left too sudden. The cab smelled closed up, dust and old coffee. The kind of stale that settles when no one's breathed the air in months. I gathered some of the papers careful, shining the light over them. Bills of lading for loads long delivered, fuel receipts yellowed with age. Then I found the journal wedged under the seat. Small black notebook, pages warped from damp. I flipped it open, telling myself I'd just glance and leave it for the authorities if need be. Entries were sparse at first, normal trucker scrawl. Miles logged, weather notes, diner stops. But farther in, the handwriting changed. Tighter, hurried. They're following again. Seen them in the mirrors after dark. Hid in the trailer last night. Heard breathing among the crates. Don't stop for abandoned rigs. Whatever you do.
My mouth went dry reading that last one. A chill settled, despite the heavy jacket I wore. That's when the whispers started. Soft at first, like air moving through the vents, barely there. Keep driving. Don't look back. I froze, flashlight beam trembling across the page. Told myself it was wind through the open doors, or my own breath echoing in the empty cab. But the voice came again, clearer, from the dash vents direct. Mac, leave it. My name. No mistaking it. I dropped the journal like it burned, heart kicking hard. The cab felt smaller sudden, air thicker, like someone else was breathing it with me. I backed out quick, boots slipping on the step, and shone the light around the rig. Trees stood silent, moonlight dappling the ground, no movement. But the whispers followed me out, faint now from inside the cab. You read it. Now they know. I hurried back to my own truck, pulse racing, telling myself fatigue, imagination, too many late nights. Climbed in, locked the doors firm, and threw it in gear. As I pulled away slow, gravel popping under the tires, I glanced in the mirrors and saw the abandoned rig's parking lights flicker on, weak but steady. Then the headlights, dim like old batteries. The horn blared sudden, long and mournful, echoing through the forest like a warning or a call. I floored it then, engine roaring as I sped down the trail, trailer swaying on the curves. In the mirrors, impossible as it was, the Freightliner moved, rolling forward slow, no one in the seat, following my path exact. Lights steady now, gaining gradual. The whispers returned in my own cab, seeping through my fence, soft and insistent. We know your stops. The orchard in Irwin, the diner in Roan, the girl you left waiting, secrets I'd kept buried, promises broken, nights I didn't come home, regrets piled like spoiled fruit in the back of my mind. The voice knew them all, naming them calm, pulling them into the moonlight. Shapes lurked in the shadows beside the trail now, tall, thin, moving between the trunks parallel to the rigs. Not clear enough to make out faces, just suggestions of forms keeping pace. The abandoned truck closed the gap steady, driverless but purposeful, horn blaring intermittently like it was trying to speak. My hands sweated on the wheel, breath coming short. I pushed the rig hard, tires flirting with the edge on curves, pumpkins shifting heavy in the trailer. The whispers grew layered, more voices joining. Join the load. Carry us. We're tired of waiting. The trail finally spilled out near a highway junction just before dawn, gravel giving way to pavement, streetlights flickering in the distance. I hit the asphalt doing 70, trailer fishtailing till I wrestled it straight. In the mirrors, the Freightliner slowed at the tree line, lights dimming gradual till they winked out. I didn't ease up till I reached the warehouse, hands shaking as I unhitched, the crew asking why I looked like I'd seen a ghost. Told them rough trail, bad dreams. That rig carried more than old logs and faded papers. It carried the regrets of the road, the weight drivers leave behind when they walk away from something unfinished. I inspect every abandoned vehicle warily now, never stop, never look close, just radio it in and keep moving. But some nights, on moonlit trails deep in the forest, I swear I hear faint whispers in the vents when the engine's off, or see faint lights flicker in the mirrors far behind. Makes me wonder how many of us are out there still driving, empty cabs rolling eternal, waiting for the next lonely hauler to stop and check. How long before my own rig joins them, doors ajar, carrying what I can't ever unload?
I've been hauling gravel and fill dirt through the Blue Ridge Mountains for damn near 25 years, ever since the construction boom in the late 90s pulled me out of the sawmill and put me behind the wheel of a dump truck. Folks around Roanoke just call me Grady. No need for more than that. On the radio, I'm Rock Runner, because I know every quarry access road and switchback from Shenandoah clear down to the North Carolina line. The work's steady. Road crews always need aggregate, and the early mornings suit me fine. Dawn runs mean you beat the heat in summer and the tourists year-round. You get the roads mostly to yourself, the forest just waking up, mist hanging in the valleys like breath from the earth itself. There's a peace to it, watching the sky go from black to gray to pale gold while the rig groans uphill loaded heavy. But peace in these mountains is borrowed time, and sometimes the lender comes collecting when you least expect. It was one of those late spring mornings back in '22, the kind where the air still carries a bite even after the dogwoods had bloomed. I loaded 40 ton of crushed limestone at a quarry outside Waynesboro just after midnight, bound for a highway widening project deep in Shenandoah National Park, where the Forest Service roads twist like intestines. The trailer was riding low, springs compressed,
tires humming steady on the pavement till I turned off onto the gravel switchbacks that climbed the eastern slope. Dawn was still an hour away when I started the ascent, sky just starting to pale behind the ridges, stars fading one by one. The forest pressed close, dense oak and hickory, understory thick with mountain laurel, the kind of woods where sound gets swallowed quick and light takes its time reaching the ground. I had the window cracked, letting in that cool, clean smell of leaf mold and wet stone, coffee steaming in the mug bolted to the dash. The switchbacks came tight and steep, engine downshifted low, jake brake rumbling every time I eased around a hairpin. Headlights swept across rock faces slick with dew, picking out the occasional reflective eyes of a fox or possum before they vanished into the brush. The rig groaned with the grade, gravel popping under the tires, trailer swaying gentle on the curves. I was maybe halfway up the longest stretch, a straight climb with a sheer drop on the left and boulder-strewn slope on the right, when the quiet broke. A howl rose sudden from the tree line below, deep and guttural, echoing off the ridges unnatural long. Not a coyote. Coyotes yip high and frantic, packs trading calls like gossip. This was lower, throatier, carrying a weight that vibrated through the cab glass and settled in my chest. It trailed off slow, then came again, closer, from higher up the slope now. I eased off the throttle instinctive, letting the rig coast a bit while I scanned the mirrors and the brush. Nothing visible in the pre-dawn gray, just trees standing dark and still. Told myself bear, maybe a big one marking territory, though bears don't howl like that. The third call came even closer, vibrating the steering wheel in my hands, and this time it carried something else, inflection, almost like words stretched and broken, a plea drawn out into agony. My skin prickled sharp. I downshifted and picked up speed again, not liking the way the forest had gone dead silent otherwise. No birds, no insects, just that call answering itself from different angles now. The sky lightened gradual, gray giving way to weak pink along the eastern ridge. I crested a switchback and started another long climb, the drop-off yawning black beside me, when my headlights caught movement on the uphill slope, a shape loping parallel to the trail, low to the ground on all fours. At first I took it for a dog, big and lean, but as the light grew and it kept pace effortless, I saw it clearer, malformed, limbs too long for its body, joints bending wrong, skin stretched tight over protruding bones like it'd been starved near to death and kept going somehow. No fur, just pale mottled hide patched with dirt and old scars, catching the headlights sickly. Eyes glowed faint, reflecting back yellow-green, fixed on the rig unblinking. It didn't charge, didn't show teeth, just paced me steady, leaping boulders and fallen logs tireless, keeping exact distance no matter how I adjusted speed. The howl came again, right alongside now, close enough I felt it in the door panel, and this time the words were almost discernible, raspy and broken. Mercy, please, like a voice box ruined by screaming or thirst. My mouth went dry, hands tightened on the wheel till knuckles ached. I'd heard the old stories around campfires and quarry lunch breaks, settlers caught in the mountains during hard winters, families snowed in with no game, resorting to things no one speak plain. Some say a few survived, changed forever, hiding in the deep woods, watching the roads that came later, starved so long their bodies twisted, minds gone but instinct remaining. Folks call them the wild folk or worse names, but always quiet, like saying it loud might call them. The thing kept pace as the trail twisted higher, dawn breaking fuller now, light filtering pale through the leaves. I caught better glimpses each time the headlight swept across it, ribs showing stark, spine ridged unnatural, head too large or neck too thin, swinging side to side as it ran. No aggression in its posture, just relentless pursuit, those glowing eyes locked on the cab like it recognized what I was. The pleas came clearer with every howl. Help, us, mercy, over and over, voice cracking like dry branches. Guilt twisted in me unbidden, memories of my own hard times, the winter I lost the house after the divorce, nearly froze sleeping in the rig rather than ask for help, pride that almost killed me. Was this thing begging for release or for company? I pushed the engine harder, gravel spraying as I took the curves faster than safe with a full load, trailer groaning protest. It matched me effortless, bounding over obstacles that would have slowed any natural animal, never falling behind, never closing the gap. The sun crested the ridge at last, spilling gold across the treetops, and just like that it was gone, vanished into the brush between one heartbeat and the next, leaving only the echo of a final fading howl. I crested the summit shaking, sweat cold under my shirt, and bowled into the construction site late but intact. The crew noticed the paw prints when I dumped the load, strange tracks trailing the tires for the last mile, too large, toes spread wrong, pressed deep as if carrying impossible weight. They joked about Bigfoot or escaped zoo animals, but their eyes stayed uneasy. I drive faster at dawn now, windows up even when the air is sweet, radio on loud to drown any quiet that might carry calls. I avoid those switchbacks when I can, take the longer routes even if it costs time, but the howl lingers sharp in memory, that broken plea threading through my dreams some nights. Makes me wonder how many survivors
drivers are still out there, twisted remnants of folks who should have died but didn't quite. How many watch the roads at first light, pacing the weary, begging for mercy they can't name, and whether one morning the plea will sound too much like my own voice, calling me to stop the rig and finally answer.
I've been pulling dry vans across the endless mountains of northern Pennsylvania for the better part of 30 years, ever since I got my CDL and decided the coal mines weren't going to take me the way they took my whole man. Folks at the truck stops up near Scranton just call me Tate, short and simple. On the CB, I'm empty nest, because more often than not, I'm running bobtail or with an empty trailer coming back from a drop. Lighter on fuel, easier on the brakes, and quieter in the wind. There's something satisfying about an empty haul. The rig rides higher, handles sweeter, and you feel like you're gliding instead of dragging the world behind you. But quiet can fool you out here, especially on those narrow forest trails where the pavement ends and the trees close in like they're listening. Sometimes empty doesn't mean empty at all. It was early November a few years back, one of those cold, clear nights where the stars feel close enough to touch and the frost starts forming on the windshield before midnight. I just dropped a load of palletized goods at a warehouse in Wilkes-Barre and was heading back north empty, taking a shortcut through the state forest land to avoid the way stations on the interstate. The trail was old logging road mostly, gravel and dirt, winding tight through stands of hemlock and birch, the endless mountains living up to their name with ridge after ridge rolling black under the moonlight. The trailer felt light as I left the warehouse, bouncing easy over the ruts, the sweet relief of no shifting cargo. I had the heat on low, window cracked just enough for fresh air, and an old cassette of Doc Watson playing soft, fingerpick guitar cutting through the engine hum. The first odd rattle came about 20 miles in, subtle enough I almost blamed the road. A faint thump from the trailer, like something small had rolled from one side to the other. I glanced in the mirrors, nothing visible through the back doors, just darkness inside the box. Figured a stray pallet had been left behind, or maybe a loose chain I'd missed during sweep-out. Happens sometimes. Warehouse loaders aren't always careful. I pulled over at the next wide spot, set the brakes, and walked back with the flashlight. Swung the doors open wide, empty as promised, just the scuffed floor and the echo of my own boots. Swept the beam corner to corner, under the rails, even checked the roof bows. Nothing. Closed her up tight, latch secure, and chalked it up to imagination or the wind playing tricks through the vents. Back in the cab, I eased onto the trail again, the rig picking up speed downhill. The cassette had moved on to a slow ballad about lost love, and I was humming along quiet when it started. Footsteps. Clear, deliberate paces inside the trailer. Heel toe, walking the length of the floor from back to front. Not random banging or shifting. Measured steps, human weight, slow and steady. My foot came off the accelerator instinctive, letting the engine brake slow us while I listened hard. The steps paused when I paused, then resumed when I gave it fuel again, syncing perfect like whoever was back there was matching my rhythm. Heart kicking up, I pulled over sharp this time, gravel spraying, and jumped out fast. Yanked the doors open again. Empty. Floor bare. Air colder than outside somehow, carrying that damp, closed-up smell you get in basements left too long. No prints in the dust, no sign anyone had been there, but the chill lingered on my skin like I'd opened a freezer. I stood there a minute, flashlight trembling slight, telling myself rats maybe, or a coon that slipped in at the warehouse and jumped out when I stopped first time. Closed the doors firm, double-checked the seals, and climbed back in uneasy. The trail stretched dark ahead, trees crowding close, moonlight dappling the gravel in silver patches. I drove slower now, radio off, listening. The footsteps started again almost immediate, back and forth, deliberate, pacing the full 53 feet like someone measuring the space. Not hurried, not scared, just walking, steady as a heartbeat. And then mine started matching them, thumping hard in my chest, the rhythm bleeding together till I couldn't tell which was which. The whispers came next, soft as breath against the bulkhead. Let me out. Faint at first, like wind through the underride guard, but clearer with every pass. Male voice, rough, tired. I turned the radio on loud, static mostly up here, but better than that plea seeping forward. The pacing intensified, footsteps heavier, faster, matching my rising panic. I sped up, tires throwing gravel, taking curves sloppy with an empty trailer that wanted to whip. The banging started then, fists on the front wall maybe, or boots kicking the sides, dull thuds echoing through the frame into the cab. Let me out, please. Louder, desperate, the voice cracking like a man too long without water. Sweat beaded cold under my shirt. I white-knuckled the wheel, pushing the rig hard through the twists, praying for the trail to spit me out near a town. Memories crept in unbidden. My old man trapped underground in the '89 cave-in, 3 days before they dug him out, broken but breathing. How he'd begged through the rock, voice faint on the rescuers' radios. Let me out.
I'd been 12, listening to the scanner with Ma, hearing him fade hour by hour. Buried those memories deep when he finally passed from the dust 5 years later, took to the road to outrun them. Now here they were, pacing behind me in an empty box. I hit a straight stretch and floored it, engine roaring protest on the grade. The banging peaked, metal denting inward, rhythmic, furious, while the whispers turned pleading. Take, let me out, it's dark. My name, clear as the moonlight on the hood. Panic rose sharp. I swerved into the first rest area I saw, a gravel lot with a single sodium light flickering, unhitched fast and clumsy, wanting distance. Trailer separated. I pulled the tractor forward 20 feet and killed the engine, sitting in sudden silence, broken only by my ragged breathing. But the sounds followed. Footsteps now in the sleeper behind my seat, soft on the carpet, pacing the narrow space. Thump, pause, thump. The curtain rustled, though no wind moved it. Whispered closer than before, right in my ear. You left me, in the dark. I didn't sleep. Sat there till dawn with the dome light on, shotgun across my lap, every creak of cooling metal making me flinch. When the sun cleared the ridges, I unhitched cautious and walked back to inspect the trailer. Inside, the floor was still bare, but the walls told the story. Tents punched inward along both sides, hand-sized, clustered like someone had beaten, desperate for attention. No blood, no marks, just cold metal bowed under impossible force from within. I finished the run late, delivered the empty trailer to the yard without a word to dispatch. Something hitched a ride that night, unseen, carrying weight no scale would register. Appalachia's loads aren't always what's on the manifest. Sometimes they carry the things we leave behind. Regrets, voices we couldn't save, pleas we drove away from. I inspect trailers thorough now, every sweep out, every stop, flashlight in every corner, doors open long in the light. But some nights, running empty through quiet forests, I feel the rig ride heavier than it should. Hear faint pacing when the road smooths out, syncing with my pulse. And I wonder how long before the whisper uses my own voice, begging from inside a box I can't open, driving forever with a passenger I'll never see.
I've been hauling heavy equipment through the backwoods in North Carolina for more than 20 years. Ever since the logging companies and quarry outfits started trusting me with their dozers and excavators on lowboy trailers. Folks down around Troy just call me Silas, plain and simple, because that's all the name I need. On the CB, I'm Iron Mule, on account of how I can pull anything they strap down, no matter how rough the trail. The work takes you places most folks never see. Old mining roads, forgotten fire cuts, trails through the Eerie National Forest that barely qualifies paths anymore. I like the solitude of it, the way the forest swallows the sound of the diesel and leaves you with nothing but your thoughts and the creak of chains. But thoughts can turn dark out there, and some places don't like being disturbed. It was a humid afternoon in late September a few years ago, the kind where the air hangs thick and the cicadas drone constant like a warning you can't quite hear. I'd picked up a tracked skidder from a sale near Ashboro and was running it to a new timber track deep in the Uwharrie, a piece of land the company had just leased from the Forest Service. The main roads would have added hours, so I took one of the old trails, an unmarked gravel track that cut straight through the heart of the forest, following an old wagon route from before the Revolution. The lowboy rode heavy behind me, chains rattling soft with every bump, the skidder's blade glinting in the rear view when the sun caught it right. Pines and hardwoods crowded close, branches arching overhead till the sky was just slivers of blue. The smell of sap and damp earth came through the vents, strong and green. About 15 miles in, the trail narrowed sudden, gravel giving way to dirt packed hard by years and neglect. That's when I saw the signpost, leaning crooked at a fork I'd never noticed before, half swallowed by kudzu and poison ivy. The board was weathered gray, letters hand-carved and faded almost to nothing, but still legible if you slowed down. Turn back, cursed ground. No official marking, no Forest Service stamp, just those words, deep cut and old, paint long flaked away. I eased past slow, reading it twice, laughed quiet to myself. I'd seen prank signs before, or old hunting club warnings meant to keep outsiders off private land. Superstition, too. Folks in these parts still talk about haints and cursed hollows like they're fact. I had a deadline and a bonus riding on timely delivery, so I pressed on, taking the right fork that looked like it continued toward the track coordinates. The trail changed almost immediate. Trees closed tighter, branches scraping along the trailer sides like fingernails testing the metal. The air grew heavier, humid turned into something thicker, carrying a faint metallic tang I couldn't place. My compass on the dash, old habit from before GPS, started acting strange, needles spinning lazy circles instead of settling north. I checked the GPS unit next. Screen flickered, then went blank. No signal blinking weak before dying altogether. Happens sometimes in deep forest, I told myself. Canyons and canopy blocking satellites. But the unease settled low in my gut, the kind that builds slow and quiet till you can't ignore it anymore.
The light dimmed gradual, though the sun was still hours from setting. A fog rose from the ground, thin at first, curling around the tires like smoke from a cold fire. It thickened quick, swallowing the trail ahead till the headlights just pushed back a gray wall. Branches scraping louder now, persistent, deliberate almost. I slowed to a crawl, engine idling low, trying to keep the rig centered on what little path I could see. That's when the apparition started, flickers at the edge of the fog, shapes moving between the trunks. At first I took them for tricks of the light, mist playing with shadows. But they solidified gradual, figures in old attire, long dresses and suspenders, coats cut from another century, standing still and watching as I passed. One step closer to the trail, a woman in a faded bonnet, face pale and indistinct. She raised a hand slow, palm out, not threatening but urgent, waving me back the way I'd come. More appeared behind her, men with beards and wide-brimmed hats, children clutching skirts, all gesturing the same. Turn around. I stopped the rig complete, heart thudding heavy, and rolled the window down a crack. The fog carried their voices then, faint murmurs overlapping, wind through leaves but shaped like words. Go back. Not safe. I yelled out, voice cracking worse than I wanted. What's wrong? Road washed out? No answer, just more waving, more figures emerging from the mist, till the tree line was lined with them. The closest one approached the driver's door, a man, tall and thin, clothes ragged like they'd been worn for decades, face translucent at the edges where the fog touched him. He placed a hand on the mirror, fingers passing slight through the glass, and leaned close. His eyes were hollow with sorrow, mouth working slow. You weren't warned. The voice came from everywhere, nowhere, echoing inside the cab till the window was barely cracked. I recoiled, foot slipping off the brake, the rig lurching forward an inch. He didn't flinch, just kept speaking calm and relentless. The ground remembers, blood soaked deep. 1780, militia came, no mercy. Memories I'd half forgotten from local history rose unbidden. Tales of a Tory encampment in these woods during the Revolution, wigs falling on them sudden in the night, massacre more than battle. Bodies buried hasty in unmarked graves, land cursed ever since. Folks said compasses failed here, trails looped unnatural, keeping the unwary circling till exhaustion or worse. Badalor storytellers hazy, but now the man detailed it quiet. Families caught unaware, pleas ignored, earth drinking what was spilled. We warn, but few listen. Stay and join us. Terror gripped me then, cold and certain. I threw the rig in reverse, trying to back out the way I'd come, trailer jackknifing slow on the narrow path, but the trail behind was gone, fog thick as wool, no sign of the fork or the signpost. I drove forward instead, hoping to punch through, but the trail looped impossible, the same rock outcrop appearing again and again, branches scraping familiar patterns along the fenders. Hours blurred, felt like days trapped in that gray loop, figures always at the edges, waving patient, murmuring warnings I no longer tried to answer. The metallic smell grew stronger, like old blood under the leaf mold. Exhaustion set in, eyes burning, when the fog thinned sudden, and the signpost reappeared ahead, leaning just as before. The trail straightened beyond it, opening clear toward the tract. I eased past slow, not looking left or right, and didn't stop till the trees fell away, and the sun broke fun again. Delivered the skidder late, hands shaking as I unchained, the crew asking why I looked like death warmed over. Told them fog and bad GPS. They nodded knowing, said that part of the forest had a reputation. The warning was real. Cursed lands trap the unwary, looping them till they can't tell past from present. I heed faded signs now, no matter how silly they seem. Turn around when one appears, take the long way, no questions asked. But some nights, driving familiar trails, I feel the fog rising early, smell that faint metallic tang, see a crooked post at the edge of vision that wasn't there before. Makes me wonder how close I came to staying, how many drivers ignored the warning and joined the watchers, how long before the ground calls loud enough that I take the wrong fork again, following a trail that only leads back to what it remembers.
I've been running flatbeds loaded with fresh-cut lumber out of the mills in North Georgia for nigh on 25 years, long enough that the smell of pine sap and sawdust is as familiar to me as my own sweat. Folks down at the yard in Gainesville just call me Lou, short for Lewis, my daddy's name too. On the CB, I'm Timberline because I know every back trail through the Chattahoochee National Forest like the grain in a good board. The work's hard but honest. Load up at dusk, drive through the night when the highways are empty and the air's cooler, deliver at dawn to the builders waiting on their framing. You learn to love the rhythm of it, the chains clinking tight, the trailer swaying gentle on the curves, the forest pressing close like an old friend who don't always speak kind. It was a warm August night a few years back, one of those evenings where the humidity clings heavy and the thunderstorms threaten but never quite break. I'd strapped down a full load of 2x12s and plywood sheets from a mill up near Dahlonega, bound for a big subdivision going in down toward Atlanta. The main routes were jammed with weekend traffic spilling out of the city, so I took one of the Forest Service trails, a wide gravel road at first that narrows deeper in, skirting the ridges and hollows where the Chattahoochee runs wild. Moon was near full, silver in the treetops, and I had the windows down, letting in that thick pine smell mixed with river damp. Radio was on low, some old gospel station fading in and out, the engine humming steady beneath it all. The canopy closed overhead gradual, oaks and pines knitting together till the sky was just patches of dark blue. My headlights carved the trail ahead, picking out roots and ruts, the occasional reflective eyes of a deer frozen at the shoulder before it bolted. I was maybe 30 miles in, the trail dipping into a long valley where the cell signal dies and the world feels farther away, when I noticed the lights. At first I took them for airplanes, high up in the breaks between branches, steady white glows moving slow against the stars. But planes have red and green strobes, and these were pure white, silent, hovering unnatural in the treetops like they'd been placed there deliberate. I slowed a touch, curious despite myself. Overhead lights on these trails usually mean civilization, maybe a ranger tower or a fire watch, but these didn't blink or sweep like searchlights. They danced faint, weaving between the highest branches without disturbing a leaf. 3 at first, then more, spreading out in a loose circle above the rig. No engine noise, no rotor wash, just silent orbs pulsing soft. I told myself drones maybe, kids playing with new toys from the city, or Forest Service monitoring something, but the unease settled quiet in my gut, the kind that grows slow when you realize you're being watched. The lights descended gradual, dropping lower through the canopy till they hovered maybe 50 feet up, close enough their glow filtered down pale and cold. No heat came with them, just pressure building steady in the cab, like climbing a mountain too fast, ears popping painful. The radio cut to static, gospel voices swallowed in hiss, then silence complete. The orbs brightened, illuminating the dash in an eerie blue-white wash that made everything look dead. My hands on the wheel pale as bone, the lumber stacks behind ghostly. They moved in patterns now, graceful and deliberate, circling the rig like fireflies grown huge and knowing. That's when the voices started. Not loud, just a low hum at first, threading through the pressure in my ears, fragments of conversations lost in time, laughter of children long grown or gone, a woman calling a name I couldn't catch, men arguing soft about land boundaries or moonshine runs, overlapping distant, like eavesdropping on memories carried in the wind. My skin crawled slow. I cracked the window wider, hoping for real sound, but the forest outside had gone dead. No crickets, no nightbirds, just the low thrum of the engine and those humming voices above. One voice cut clearer than the rest, familiar in a way that twisted my stomach. My daddy's, low and gravel rough like it was before the cancer took his breath. "Easy now, Lou. Watch the road." I hadn't heard that voice in 15 years, not since I sat by his bed listening to him fade. Tears stung sudden. I wiped them angry, focusing on the trail, telling myself recording maybe, or bleeding through from some distant tower. But it came again, patient. "Slow down, son. Danger ahead." The pressure built sharper, head aching like a vice, and the lights dipped lower, bathing the windshield in cold glow. The trail curved sharp into a downhill stretch then, and as the headlights swept ahead, I saw why he'd warned. A washout gapped across the path, fresh from the rains we'd had upstream. Mud and rock collapsed into a gully deep enough to swallow the rig. I braked hard, tires locking on gravel, the trailer swaying heavy behind me. Stopped inches from the edge, heart hammering wild. Without those lights guiding my eyes, or Daddy's voice, I'd have plowed straight in, maybe rolled the whole load into the ravine. The orbs hovered steady above the washout now, pulsing faint like they were showing the way around. A narrow detour along the uphill shoulder, roots exposed but passable if I took it careful. I eased forward slow, tires crunching over loose stone, the rig tilting scary on the grade. The lights stayed with me, illuminating just enough ahead to see the safe path, voices humming soft approval. Daddy's voice once more, softer. "Good boy, keep straight." Pressure eased gradual as I cleared the danger, ears popping relief. Then, as sudden as they'd come, the orbs ascended, rising smooth through the canopy till they winked out among the stars, leaving only moonlight and the normal night sounds rushing back in. I didn't stop till I reached the delivery site at dawn, hands steady when mine reeling, unloading mechanically, barely speaking to the crew, scratches on the trailer roof unexplained, long shallow marks like something light but insistent had rested there.
canopy hides mysteries older than the trails, things that light the way or lead you astray depending on the night. I watch the skies wary now and runs through deep forest, especially when the pressure builds and the radio fades. Some evenings I swear I see faint glows high in the branches, patient, waiting, and when Daddy's voice whispers faint on the wind, "Easy now, Lou," I slow down every time, never sure if it's saving me again or finally calling me home to whatever light waits above the dark.
I've been hauling supplies into the backcountry of Tennessee's Big South Fork for the better part of 22 years. Everything from canned goods and propane tanks to chainsaw parts and medical kits for the remote camps and ranger stations that dot the Cumberland Plateau. Folks at the co-op in Oneida just call me Birch on account of my last name and the pale scar that runs down my arm like bark. On the CB, I'm Ridge Runner because I know every washed-out trail and low-water crossing from Jamestown clear to the Kentucky line. The work suits me. Long hours alone, the rig loaded heavy, the forest so thick in places the sunlight barely reaches the ground. You get used to the quiet, the way the streams talk constant under the tires, the smell of wet leaves and river mud seeping through the vents. But quiet has a way of turning on you out here, especially when the water runs high and the vines hang low. It was a damp morning in early May a few years ago, the kind where the mist clings to the hollers long after sunrise, and the ground never quite dries from the night rains. I'd loaded up at the warehouse before dawn, crates of non-perishables and hardware for a backcountry outpost near the Big South Fork Weather, a place only reachable by old logging fords and fire roads. The trailer sat heavy behind me, chains clinking soft with every rut, the rig riding low on the springs. I'd taken the shortest route, a gravel trail that skirts the river for miles before crossing at a shallow ford locals call Leatherwood, wide but gentle most seasons, rocks worn smooth by decades of current. The air smelled rich that morning, loamy and green, dogwoods blooming pale along the banks, their petals drifting lazy onto the water. The trail ran parallel to the stream for a good stretch, close enough I could hear the rush over the engine hum. Sun filtered weak through the canopy, dappling the path in shifting light, vines and kudzu hanging thick from the branches like curtains. I was humming along to an old cassette, Stanley Brothers, something mournful about the lonesome river, when the ford came into view. The water ran higher than I'd expected, brown and swift from upstream rains, but still passable if I took it slow. My headlights swept across the crossing as I downshifted, tires crunching onto the gravel bar, and that's when I saw the figure. It stood rooted in the mud at the near edge, half in the shallows, half on the bank, tall and thin, limbs entwined with vines thick as my wrist, green leaves sprouting where skin should be. At first glance, I took it for a stump overgrown, or maybe a prank. Kids sometimes lash branches together for scares. But as the rig eased closer, it stirred. Slow, deliberate, like waking from deep sleep. The head lifted, face rough and bark-like, cracked and weathered, eyes deep-set and pleading beneath a crown of fresh shoots. Vines wrapped its torso and arms tight, roots trailing into the mud like anchors, holding it firm against the current. I braked gentle, not wanting to spook whatever it was. Drunk hiker maybe, caught in a tangle, or someone hurt and hallucinating from exposure. The water lapped around its legs, tugging faint but steady. "Hey," I called out the window, voice carrying over the rush. "You all right? Need a hand?" No answer, just those eyes fixing on me, dark and moist, full of something between pain and recognition. The mouth worked slow, cracked bark peeling, but no sound came. A chill settled despite the warm cab. I eased forward, cautious, tires entering the ford, water splashing high on the doors. That's when it moved. Not sudden, just a shift of weight, vines creaking like old ropes, roots pulling free from the mud with wet sucking sounds. It dragged itself after me, one laborious step at a time, tendrils trailing in the current. I stopped downstream on the far bank, gravel crunching under the tires, and watched in the mirrors. It followed persistent, crossing the ford slow, water rising to its waist but not slowing it. Leaves rustled along its limbs, new growth unfurling as it moved, like the forest itself was feeding its strength. I should have driven on, deadline waiting, common sense screaming, but something held me, curiosity or maybe pity for whatever poor soul had gotten themselves tangled so bad. I stepped out, boots sinking into the soft bank, and approached careful. "Stay there, I'll call help," I said, pulling my phone, though I knew signal was spotty this deep. It kept coming, closer now, vines tangling heavy in the water. Up close the smell hit, rich earth and rot, green sap and something human underneath, sweat and fear long fermented. The face was worse, features blurred where bark had grown over, eyes human still, pleading clear. It raised one arm slow,
tendrils extending like fingers, reaching toward me. The whispers started then, soft, rustling like leaves and wind, but shaped into words. Claimed. Long ago. The voice came from everywhere, from the vines maybe, or the stream itself. Wandered. Too far. Roots took hold. It detailed the tale, calm and relentless. A man lost in these woods generations back, injured and alone, lying by the water till the vines found him. How they crept slow at first, seeking warmth, then tighter, drinking what he offered till flesh and green became one. Others too, hunters, moonshiners, runaways, claimed quiet over years, the forest growing them into itself, keeping them alive in its own way. Join the growth. No more alone. Terror rose slow, cold in the veins. I backed toward the rig, boots slipping on wet gravel as it dragged closer, tendrils extending farther, brushing the air inches from my jacket. Vines from the bank stirred in sympathy, reaching across the ground like they sensed kin. One snagged my ankle brief. I kicked free hard, heart hammering. It didn't hurry, just kept coming, whispering growth tales, how the pain fades eventual, how the forest provides eternal. I bolted to the cab, slammed the door, and threw the rig in gear. Tires spun in mud before catching, the trailer lurching as something tugged brief from behind, vines snagging the underride bar, creaking protest before snapping free. I didn't look back till the trail climbed high above the river, miles between me and the ford. Delivered the supplies late, hands trembling as I unchained, the crew noticing the green streaks on the bumper, sap thick and fresh, vines torn and still twitching faint when I hosed them off. Told them I'd brushed overhang. They nodded uneasy, said Leatherwood had stories, folks gone missing over centuries, vines thicker there than anywhere. The forest claims its own slow, rooting the lost till they're part of the green forever. I avoid watery crossings now, take the high roads even when they add hours, especially in spring when the growth runs strong. But some trails dip inevitable to streams, and when the vines hang low over moving water, I feel eyes beneath the leaves, pleading, patient. Hear faint rustling whispers on the wind. Join the growth. Makes me wonder how many are out there still, half human, half green, waiting by the fords for the next weary traveler to pause too long. How fine the line is between passing through and putting down roots that never let go.